see me? We starting? Fabulous. Okay. Welcome to the first day of the Global Youth Series. Well, those of you in front of me look amazing. Everyone's got lovely smiles on their faces. Don't worry, you to the left with the red top. But yes, so today is brought to you by the Coventry City of Culture in collaboration with My Runway Group and supported by the British Council. I am Lola Michelle and I'll be guiding you through today's program. And yes, let's enjoy. So today we're here to focus on the future. Today is about celebrating the role of youth in the new world and what we want to see. And it's also about putting a spotlight on your ideas, your creative work, and your energy. I'm relying on that today, guys. You'll hear about young people leading the way on activism, fashion sustainability, entrepreneurship, and so much more. For those of you joining remotely, hello, arrivederci. Bonjour, I don't have any more. But I would love if you utilize the YouTube comments and essentially shared how you would greet somebody in your country. That would be incredible. Also, please do use the hashtag on Twitter. That's hashtag WeMove with an exclamation mark. Please, there's an emphasis on the exclamation mark. Also, please do utilize the Miro board. I've got lip gloss on my hair. Please ignore that. Please do utilize the Miro board. Those of you that are joining us remotely, you'll find that on the links that have been provided to guide you through today. Those of you that are live in the flesh, in person, please do look on the sides of the walls. You'll see the QR codes, not the COVID ones, and use those so you can access the Miro board. As well as that, we have our wall of hope straight outside, where you can physically pin any thoughts, opinions, or questions that you might have as we get through the day. So, let's get on. So, now, when we think about the world we want, the biggest thing on everyone's mind at the moment is saving the planet. These last 2 weeks in the UK has hosted COP26, which is a global summit to prevent climate change in Glasgow. So, we're going to play 2 very short clips for you that have been specially made for us today. So, I'm very, very pleased to announce and introduce Andy Street, who is the Mayor of the West Midlands, with a message for you.
Hi there, Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands here. Delighted to say a few words at the Coventry City of Culture Youth Summit. I know your summit is designed to coincide with COP26, and that's, of course, why I can't be with you today, because I'm up in Glasgow flying the flag for the West Midlands, really getting this message across that although there is a huge international challenge, which hopefully we will all come together to address, there is a dependence on cities like Coventry, regions like the West Midlands, to do our bit if we are going to address that challenge. And I know that young people feel that probably more than anybody else. If I look back to the summer of 2019, when the West Midlands set its goal to be carbon neutral, to get to net zero by 2041, 9 years before the government target for the country as a whole, it was young people who drove us to that. The youth climate strikers and, of course, the Young Combined Authority were really forceful in saying to us, you must address this. So thank you for pushing us in that way. In terms of some of the work that's now going on, we've got, of course, our commitment to green, clean public transport. We're seeing literally billions of pounds invested in that across the West Midlands. We're thinking about this challenge of retrofitting, making people's homes more efficient. Great trials of that going forward. And we're also thinking about how business and industry can get to net zero. So the whole sort of question about battery manufacturer, making our industry less dependent on carbon, all that is part of the agenda. So hopefully that gives you encouragement that we have really got momentum around this. But I hope today you will push us even further. So I'm hungry to hear outcomes of today, perhaps through the Youth Combined Authority. That's the best way that you can connect with us, because genuinely we're really keen to listen to the views of young people, because after all, this is going to be your planet for many, many more years to come. Thanks a lot for what you're doing today. Look forward to the outcomes.
So as Andy says, young people are leading the way when it comes to climate change. So they essentially are, you are leading the way in terms of pushing people to make changes as important people at the top, the world leaders, and encouraging them to push through things that are really important to help encourage climate change and saving the planet. So I did mention we had 2 clips. Our next clip is going to come up. So we have Paola Lupai from the European Youth and Environmental Network, and she is here direct from Glasgow with a very mini report regarding activism.
Hello Coventry, and to all young people across the globe joining for the first day of the Global Youth Series. I'm Paula, I'm the External Relations Officer at Youth and Environment Europe, and I'm so glad to be joining you today, even if just virtually through a video, to talk about youth engagement, international cooperation, and the role of innovation in shaping social change. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and Youth and Environment Europe, just the organization I represent. I'm a 21-year-old student. I study politics and international relations, and I'm passionate about the environment as well as youth voice in decision-making process and politics. I've been volunteering with YE, Youth and Environment Europe, for over a year now, and it's been just an incredible network to be a part of. Youth and Environment Europe is the largest network of European youth-led NGOs, and it's just an incredible place to make sure that young people are empowered, uplifted, and there's a space for them in the decision-making progress. I think today, as you can probably see, I'm joining you from COP26 in Glasgow, which I think it's also a great background to have while talking about international cooperation and the climate crisis. I think the role young people have in shaping the climate crisis response is undeniable. I mean, after marching in the streets, organizing and using social media to keep politicians accountable and making sure that their demands were heard, I think it's clear to say that they have revolutionized the political framework that was no longer fit for them and asked for one that was better than the one that they needed. And thus talking about young people when talking about climate change solutions is so important. But most importantly to me is talking about young people and international cooperations of young people. Because in many, many examples we can see that that has been crucial and needs to continue happening, and finding spaces to do so is so important. I mean, if we look at all the strikes that happened around the globe, Fridays for Future was kind of a global movement, and apart from that, so many strikes and so many protests happened in a way that people from around the globe were all protesting for the same things while also being aware of different contexts. Similarly, people from around the globe were protesting for stuff that did not even affect them or their own countries, just responding to the need of other young people to have their voices heard. If we look at COP, specifically here now, we can definitely see that that is an incredible place for international cooperation. At a personal level, I've been so excited about COP. I've been hearing about it for over a year, and I was just, the emotion was leading on to COP was just rising at the idea, not only for the important conversations and the challenges that I was sure I was going to face, but also just the idea of meeting so many of the people that I was working, that I heard of, and that I was inspired by. And I have to say that so far, I've definitely been rewarded in that. And just talking about the work Youth and Environment Europe does to enhance international cooperation, that is just one of the most important parts of our work. We connect with our member organization across the continent, making sure that it's a space for young people across Europe and not just the EU as well. We try to create connections beyond Europe and working with people that are not part of the continent to make sure that Europe also, young Europeans are also aware of challenges outside of their own sphere of interest. And we have a big focus on working with marginalized communities, and we definitely are trying to implement projects that really showcase the importance of including everyone in the climate movement. We obviously have been also trying to unite different passionate volunteers during the COVID crisis in a time of such helplessness, creating a space for people who are fighting about something so important. And just we have a great exchange of ideas around solutions in climate change, environmental protection, policy making, etc. Going from nature-based solutions all the way to the importance of different energy usage. Just in order to make sure that all people, regardless of their skills or regardless of their previous experience and exchange and knowledge, could find a place where they could focus on something that they care about. To truly experience a cooperative and internationally driven response to the challenges that we're facing in climate crisis is so very important, and I do hope that the Global Youth Series can really be a place to make sure that international cooperation is enhanced and social change is shaped and created, and young people together can find a place to talk about it more. And I hope you will consider looking at Youth Environment Europe and the work that we do. And I believe that they should share with you some of the work that we've been doing for COP26. So thank you so much for having me.
So hopefully that's given you a sense of what's at stake and what we can do to achieve it. But, you know, for now, enough from me, promise. Well, actually, no, just for a little bit. We're going to move on to our first panel. I'm looking at them, I'm looking around. Yes, so our first panel today is hosted by Dose of Society. Now, they're an organization who use tech to use real people, well, not even to use them, to let real people tell their stories and make real connections. They are talking about what brings together young activists from Nigeria, from Lebanon, from the UK, and all across the globe. Not the globe, the road. But anyway, yes. So I'm going to pass it over to Nee and Ahmed from Dose of Society to introduce us to our first panel. So please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Come on board, guys.
Working, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, it's a long walk. Mic check, 1, 2. Perfect. Thank you for everyone for attending. My name's Ahmed. This is the amazing.
My name is Nee Lotte.
And yeah, so we run Dose of Society, a digital media platform, sharing voices from, socially conscious millennials around the globe. To give you a bit of context, we have a community of activists, roughly around 300 plus in 115 countries and counting. We'll let you know how we've built that and how we got to that.
Amazing. But today we're super excited for this panel. We're joined by amazing panelists from around the world, as Lola mentioned before, from Lebanon, Nigeria, and also local here, Coventry, and also from Cambridge as well. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. So I'm going to state their names, and if you could just briefly introduce yourself, that would be amazing. So the first... we have Leah and Jana from
Walking Forest.
If you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Leah. I'm 24. I work as an architectural assistant and also do a bit of art on the side. And yeah, we joined the Walking Forest back in May. And went to COP last week.
Hello, so I'm Yana, and I'm also part of Walking Forest. I'm 22, and my practice is theatre and performance, and I create work about capitalism. I critique capitalism and create work with environmental themes in mind as well.
And then we have the amazing Aliyah as well, who's come straight from Cambridge. So if you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Hey, sorry, my throat. I'm Aliyah. I'm 18 years old. I'm a student, first and foremost. I'm at Cambridge studying education, policy and international development. And I'm also the founder of Pupil Power and a proud member of Dose of Society, and just a young person wanting to be a part of anything that means I can create change and make the world a better place.
Amazing. And we're also joined by Laura from Lebanon, who's going to be joining us virtually as well. And also we have Ayodeji from Nigeria, who's going to be joining us as well, who's going to also introduce us when we speak to them. But as we move swiftly along, today we're talking about everything activism. Activism in 2021. As you know, activism has been, especially from 2020 all the way to 2021, has been very prevalent, especially with what's been happening from, Black Lives Matter to climate change, from female activism. There's been a lot of activism that's been happening and been taking place. And we want to highlight within this whole panel, essentially, what activism actually is and what it means to each and every one of us. And actually in terms of how we actually get to the root of it. But as well as that, we also want to introduce ourselves. So, Ahmed, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so before we get into the panel, we're just going to quickly show a quick, I think, a minute video on what Dose Society is, what we're currently building, and yeah, we'll move on to the amazing stories of each panelist. So yeah, video, please.
Introducing Dose of Society, a media tech platform connecting communities and like-minded advocates around the world through the power of video and collective action. Our world is suffering, but young people are taking action. From climate change to human rights and gender inequality, the world of tomorrow will be shaped by us. At Dose of Society, we're tired of consuming content and not knowing what to do next. We want long-lasting solutions, not moments. Just a spin of the globe will allow users to explore stories from across the world and provide updates on what's happening on the ground in their countries.
As you can see behind me, there was total destruction to the capital. Thousands of buildings were affected by the blast.
I'm here at the climate march in Los Angeles.
Dozens of protesters are still trapped inside without food and resources.
And by the click of a button, users can then support causes instantly. And it's not just about uploading content. We'll enable users to find and build their own communities, because together we can shift global conversations into tangible actions and real solutions. Young people already share a common thread and unifying goal: to change the world for good. Now, Dose of Society gives us a home, a platform for change.
Perfect. So yeah, if anyone has any questions throughout the panel, we'll have a Q&A session towards the end. So any questions about us, the amazing panelists, just jot them down, and yeah, save them to the end.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Yeah, so today, as I said, and I briefly mentioned before, we're going to be speaking about everything activism. So just as I move along, we're going to be speaking about what is activism. Now, the first question that I want to pose is, what is activism? And as I said, activism is a very broad term that, can mean various things. So it's a question I want to pose to the panel, and just mainly speaking about what activism actually means to you. So I guess I'll start with Walking Forest. What does activism mean to you, either Jana or Leah?
I think for me, and particularly with doing the Walking Forest, is what I learned was that it's okay to kind of have activism as quite an individual and personal thing that you do throughout your day-to-day. I think it's really important to have like empathetic and more kind of under the radar, I guess, activists around globally. You don't need to have be on a soapbox and telling everyone how you think and how you feel. And there's a lot of opportunity behind that to teach and talk to friends, family, strangers about what you do and how they could also do something similar. And I think that's really great because it's on a personal level and you can relate to them and think, oh, I know this about you, so this is an opportunity for you to do something that's going to be beneficial to you and to the planet or whatever your cause is.
I think to add to that, I would say that even though right now in the system we live in, there's so much emphasis on individualism and sort of what you as an individual can do, and what for me activism is and what Walking Forest has done is shifted that emphasis on individual and put it in a collective care, collective understanding. Like our act of carrying a tree around Coventry from dawn to dusk for 2 days, we all women had to be connected in it together. So we were supporting each other, and that is essentially what activism is for me, because besides that, it also takes very complex issues and makes them digestible, makes them visible, and makes people talk about it, which is essentially what we need people to do: talk, care, and connect.
And I would just say, activism to me is just every day, as in you wake up, something annoys you, or you're scrolling on your phone on the way to work or to school, and something's frustrating in the news, and you just decide to do something, whether it's as small as having a conversation or writing a letter to your MP or speaking to your teacher about something that you want changed. It's like every day. And I think a lot of times the word activism has a lot of like negative connotations to it, because you just think of like radical activism or people, you know, gluing themselves to the road. You know, it to me, genuinely, like, if we break that down, that stigma that's attached to it, and make it seem like it's just accessible to all, and it's an energy, then everyone's an activist in their own right, if that makes sense.
110%. And we have Ayo, Deji, and Lara on Zoom, I believe. So it'll be good for them to quickly introduce themselves and also speak about what activism means to them, if they're on and everything is working and there's no technical difficulties.
Yes, you can go first, Lara.
Amazing.
There we go.
I'm Lara Case. I'm 35 years old. I'm from Beirut, Lebanon. I work in events management, and I have suddenly become an activist. As I usually say to most people, I never considered myself an activist until it was too late. And I mean, activism for me is really just having a vision for something and fighting for it. I think in Lebanon we have a lot of issues, a vision for how we see our country, and I don't think we should just wait and expect for it to happen. We need to fight for it. So I realized that, and so I'm trying to be part of that mission.
Amazing. Ayodeji, what does activism mean to you, and can you introduce yourself as well?
Okay, thank you very much, Nee and Ahmed. My name is Ayodeji Saraki. I'm a media personality and writer, and I also do some podcasts just to talk about African stories and all of that. I don't see myself as an activist, like Lara said, but a lot of people call me an activist. So here's my definition of activism. I think activism is the process, because I really think it's a process of galvanizing people, and individuals to contribute to solving problems, more than they can ever criticize. So, and personally, when I think of activism, three words come to mind: speaking up, challenging the status quo, and the call to action. Because oftentimes I see people, they neglect, the last one, which is call to action. And I honestly believe that, activism without a well-structured and thoughtful action plan, to back whatever you're saying up, is just simply speaking English. So you'd have to have a well-structured plan to back up whatever, movement you're trying to do, whatever thing you're saying, whatever thing you're advocating for. So that's what I think it is.
Amazing, amazing. And we also have a double whammy today. We're joined by Jad, who's also from Lebanon as well. So Jad, would you be able to just quickly introduce yourself and just tell me briefly, what is activism to you?
My name is Jade Doumani. I'm a Lebanese writer based in Beirut. I grew up here, and most of my life, Lebanese activism is something you're supposed to avoid, because you're always going to be faced with this violent corruption and backlash from people you thought were your friends and family. But now in the post-revolution climate, it's something we're all encouraged to embrace, and I find that heartwarming, and I'm really happy that this is the new state of activism in Lebanon.
Perfect. Look forward to delving into each of your stories. So yeah, we're going to move on and switch over to Nigeria, Mr. Ayodeji. As you may or may not know, Nigeria has been impacted by EndSARS. And yeah, Ayodeji is going to briefly speak about that. So Ayodeji, just a quick definition for what is EndSARS, how did it start, and yeah, what's happening now in Nigeria?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to give you a brief history and a definition of what EndSARS is. So the full meaning of SARS is Special Anti-Robbery Squad Unit. It's one of the 14 units under the Nigerian Police Force. And what EndSARS is was a call to end or disband that unit in the Nigerian Police Force. So last year, which October, the 4th of October, there was a video that went around on social media in Nigeria where two SARS officers were trying to arrest two young men. And they shot one in broad daylight and the guy died. So And Nigeria was in lockdown. The COVID-19 happened, so everyone had what they're dealing with various things, and so that happened, and when that happened on the 11th of October, Nigerians went out on the streets, were clamoring to end SARS, and the government finally ended SARS. They disbanded SARS. But the problem was, immediately they disbanded SARS, they created another unit called SWAT, that's the Special Weapon and Tactics Unit, and the government was emphasizing that it was just important to create, a special squad to tackle robbery and all of that. But because Nigerians were not believing of the government, because since 2015, the government had tried to disband SARS 5 times, and they were unsuccessful to disband SARS. So, Nigerians were angry, Nigerians weren't having it. They went out on the streets, protested continuously, and sadly, on the 20th of October, there was a shooting that happened where the Nigerian soldiers went to the Lekki toll bridge, and in order to disperse protesters, they shot in the air. Some people died as a result of it. And currently, that was, I think, last month, on the 18th, there was a panel which was set up. The panel comprised the government, public sector and private sector, to investigate, the happening on the Lekki toll bridge, what happened during the EndSARS, and the conclusion and the recommendation and the report has been submitted to the Lagos State government. So, and I'm aware that compensation has been made. They have paid about 148 million naira to some victims, about 23 victims that lost their lives, so they pay to their families. But that's not enough, The thing is that there has to be a full restructuring of the Nigerian police force. The wages being paid to Nigerian police is not enough. Their welfare, how they live. I mean, most Nigerians can complain and go on and on about that. But I think it's just important to empower their security operatives, because it's only when they can think well and their needs are being catered for, that's when they can have the morale to secure the communities. So that's what happened during NSAS. I think that's what NSAS is.
Wow. And how has it personally impacted you, Ayodeji?
And in terms, and when you think about that question again, I think us in the West, we take granted of activism and protesting, etc. Obviously, it's different, when your life's on the line and could be on the line. So, what's the mindset of young Nigerians when they go out and fight for, I guess sometimes basic human rights, that we in the West, have take advantage of?
Yeah, like Nigeria and like you mentioned the West. So, for example, many other places in the West, I mean, we see videos, around the world, even in America, what happens during protests, police, try to contain it and shooting might take place. The only difference is because we lack weaponry, so we can use live ammunitions and while we use bullets and all of that. So basically, it's not safe, especially for activists. But you see, what I've noticed is, problems are unique, problems are local, and problems are peculiar. And peculiar problems call for peculiar solutions. So to blanket, an entire problem with one solution, in my view, is to be intellectually lazy. We have to look for ways to address things. So what I will say about protesting in Nigeria and activism is that young people need to properly galvanize themselves and look for an alternative way, because we are young, we're intelligent, we're educated, and we're in a democratic system, and a democratic system, how you operate, if you're seeking for change, for example, you have to go through it in a democratic way. So if we're doing our activism and all of that, there has to be a well-structured plan. So for example, let me give you a good example. The general elections are coming in Nigeria in 2023. And before you can vote, you have to have your permanent voter's card. So what I'm doing, what many of my friends are doing, who are activists, are organizing people to get their PPCs. There's no excuse. we have to remove the bad leaders. You have to take action with your voters card. So if more young people get their voters card, on that day, the same way we organized ourselves during the NSAS movement and contributed resources and did it in one unity, it's the same way we have to go on the election day, galvanize ourselves properly, get resources, and make sure that our young people are not disenfranchised from voting. So that's the solution, because it's only when we act with unity. Because if one person, so for example, during the NSAS also, after the NSAS happened, some accounts were frozen. Some people who were identified as the leaders of the NSAS movement, their accounts were frozen. And that's in another way, it's just a desperate attempt, for example, to scare people, So the solution to that is that we need cooperation, amongst young people. Activists need to work together, as a collective to take back our country, Nigeria.
Amazing, amazing. And you briefly just touched on, your hopes for the future. But would you be able to expand just in terms of your personal hopes and just collectively your hopes for, Nigeria in general, and when it comes to the whole NSAR situation? What are your hopes for the future?
Well, my hope is to see a better Nigeria, a Nigeria where the system works, because NSAS has enlightened a lot of young people in terms of the need to participate in politics. It's not enough being on the sidelines and not being part of, the process. So my hope and prayer is that more Nigerians, more young people in Nigeria action. It's not enough to just take pictures and, just be speaking and going on media rounds and all of that. You have to act. You have to be in the process. You have to participate. So my hope is to see a Nigeria where young people hold government offices, key offices, where young people are part of the conversation, are fully part of the conversation. Because, the youthful population in Nigeria makes up about 60%. So we are more, and Nigeria's population is about 200 million. So we are talking of over 120 million young Nigerians within the age of, let's say, 23 to 35 years of age. So we have more young people. So more young people need to be part of the conversation. So I believe that's my hope and prayer for Nigeria, is to see more young people, leading.
Thank you, Adeji. Appreciate it. Please stay as well, because there'll definitely be some questions for you. And yes, we'll move to Lebanon. Lara, are you there?
I am.
Perfect.
Hello.
And Jad as well. So yeah, thank you, Lara, and thank you for introducing yourself. I would love to just get started on Lebanon in general. I know there's been many things happening over the past 2 years, and I'm sure you've seen, the country turn upside down pretty quickly. Give us a quick timeline on, when things really started to turn for Lebanon and where it is in its current state.
Okay, so yes, Lebanon's situation is a very special one, you could say. Our country has a very, very wide diversity of religions and sects, and a mix of different people, and I think this is where most of our issues have started. Ever since the Civil War, we've had, a very sectarian government, a very sectarian country to begin with. So in October 2019, a revolution broke out. There was a mass uprising because of a lot of things that were going on with the economy, with the government, and people were just super unsatisfied. They didn't want this to go on anymore, so people ran out into the streets. And we were on the streets for several months. Once this started happening as well, this is when the economic crisis hit around the end of 2019 and has been going on since. To give you an idea, before the crisis, the dollar was 1,500 Lebanese pounds, and today it's 20,000. So you can imagine the inflation and the damage that has done economically. It's extremely difficult right now in our country for businesses to survive, for people to survive. People are getting the same salaries in Lebanese pounds, but with expenses rising. And since then, it's just been a turmoil and an increase of things falling one after the other. Gas prices are going up, they're cutting electricity. I mean, before the crisis, we were okay with not having electricity 3 to 6 hours a day, and now we get electricity 3 to 6 hours a day. And everything else, privatized generators, so that means more fuel costs. Hospitals are running out of medication. It's just been extremely difficult, and considering that last year we were also faced with COVID, it's just been problem after problem. It's been extremely difficult for us. We're still managing. We've been through a lot as a country, and as a people, we say resilient, but we hate saying that today because we don't want to be resilient anymore. We just want to live. We just want to be in a country where everybody has equal human rights, where we're treated the same no matter our religion or our affiliation. We want the government to represent the people, not just each sect because the government has many different political parties running it. This is what's going on in Lebanon right now. And then to top it off, in August of 2020, the Beirut blast explosion happened, which was 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate that exploded at the Beirut port in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, killing over 200 people, damaging hundreds of thousands of homes. And until today, not one person has been held accountable for what has happened. We've been chasing after the government to follow up this case, and the judges they've been trying to remove the judge. They don't want this case to go through because they are the ones to blame. The government is the one to blame, so why would they support this case being solved and going through? So as you can see, corruption on corruption on corruption. So right now, when this all started, we felt like as a civilians, we had to fight for our country, and that's how I became involved. A lot of civilian movements were the ones helping after the blast and helping people and fixing homes and doing all the repairs, which should have been done by the government. So as you can imagine, we have a lot to fight for. We have a big, deeply rooted system that's going to be very, very hard to uproot. We have elections coming up in March, and so right now all the independent and youth movements that are joining forces are trying to work towards this date in terms of trying to secure as many new seats in parliament that are independent and not sectarian and not politically affiliated, to political parties that don't represent us as a people, that represent only their own individual religious groups or parties. So this is what's happening so far in a nutshell. Of course, it's a lot more intricate than that.
Wow, yeah, a lot to take in and a lot to go through, honestly. And, appreciate people like you that are having to, endure this and, standing up for things that are currently happening within the country. Speaking about the Beirut blast as well, we recall you doing a video for us, actually. So it'd be great if we could showcase that video now, just to give you a quick preview.
4 days after the blast that took place at the capital of the city, at the Beirut port, a blast that destroyed thousands of homes, totaled the capital, displaced hundreds of people from their homes, killed over 100 people, injured over 4,000 people. Today, we came to Martyrs Square to protest because the government, until today, has yet to issue a statement about what happened, has yet to provide any social relief, social aid, relief of any sort to its people. The government is still not taking any responsibility for what happened, and we are angry. We cannot accept what's happening. On this day, when tens of thousands of people have come down to the center of the city to protest, they've attacked us with tear gas. They've attacked us with rubber bullets. They've attacked us and are not letting us congregate and are not giving us our freedom of speech and freedom of expression. We're here to tell them that we won't take it anymore, that we won't accept anymore what they're doing. I'm beyond words at this point. How can a government leave their people? How can a government abandon their people in this time of need? People are in their buildings still probably stuck. There are people under rubble. We don't even know the extent of the damage until today, and the government has done nothing. And when we come here to protest and to voice ourselves, what do? They attack us with tear gas. This is the Lebanese government that you know and see today. This is Lebanese government that we will not accept to have anymore. This is Lebanese government that we are going to get rid of. Look, tear gas everywhere, and thousands of people are here. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, when we watch that, we don't even know sometimes what to say and how to react to that. So just watching that video, Lara, again, I'm sure it's probably brought some memories. How has this like impacted you? And I guess obviously you're obviously in a little bit different situation to others, where you also have a choice to leave the country and live elsewhere. You have family elsewhere. You're in a fortunate position where others aren't, but you still choose to stay in Lebanon. You still choose to support and help your people. So yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, I am more fortunate than others. I have another nationality, so I can leave whenever I would like to, which maybe is the reason why I'm still in Lebanon. But at the same time, I don't want to leave my country. This is where I'm from. This is where everyone my family is from. This is where I grew up. I'm not going to hand it over to a bunch of warlords. I'm not going to hand it over to a bunch of criminals. And I don't think anybody should let that happen. I mean, I think that's why I think as an activist, my purpose might be to inspire others to follow this dream with me and to try to fight for Lebanon like I am. Thankfully, I have a huge and amazing support group, a group that we founded called Mintashin, which is now a political party. We're fighting for, getting as many people into the government that can fight for the rights that we believe in, human rights for everybody, equality, getting people, and also, trying to also hold these people accountable for everything that they've done, for the money that they've stolen, for the Beirut blast, to get people held accountable for what happened. I mean, up until today, there's not a single response. It's been a year and a month now, a year and 2 months or 3 months even, and nothing, not a single word from the government. They didn't come down to the streets till like maybe 10, 20 days later, and with a very, very weak excuse for like help. It was just sending some army, and it was a joke. So, I mean, yeah, it was very emotional to see that again, honestly.
And what would you say your hopes are for the future, just considering everything that is happening right now in Lebanon and what has happened previously? What are your hopes for the future, personally and also collectively?
I mean, my hopes my hopes is that people will wake up and realize that they don't need to be following a political leader to get their basic human rights. I don't think, I have hopes in the youth that are a bit more aware of the way things work around the world, and I hope that they will help fight for Rani. I hope that they will basically fight for us and help us get the votes that we need to get the right people into parliament. I think that, it's going to be a long journey. I don't think it's going to be easy. Like I said, this is 30 years and 40 years of warlords installing their fear in people and installing their grasp over Lebanese citizens. So hopefully, election after election, we slowly move into getting more independence and slowly getting, more laws out that help protect us, that help, secure the rights that we want and need. So it's a long journey. It's a difficult one. We're in a very tricky situation. Lebanon is very different from any other country. Usually it's just one group of people against the government. Now it's like 5 or 6 different major groups all fighting with each other for different things. So this is the challenge. It's uniting people. And my hopes is that hopefully one day we get to have that country that we all dream of, where we can live and just, live freely.
Amazing, amazing. Lara, thank you so much for what you're doing and who you are. Honestly, like just in terms of the impact that you created. Just hopefully there's more people like yourself in Lebanon, and yeah, just continue fighting the good fight.
And after, so we're going to go back to Lebanon, like a roughly 20-minute strad. He's going to show us a video and also going to talk about his experience. But before we go back to Lebanon, we'll bring it back here to Coventry and speak to Elia and, the amazing work she's done at Pupil Power. So yeah, what is Pupil Power? How did you start? Give it to us all.
So Pupil Power is a fully youth-led organisation. Our little mantra is reimagining education in the 21st century, which sounds quite broad, but essentially it's just young people across the UK who are passionate and frustrated in loads of different ways about the education system. So whether it's mental health, to the curriculum, to just a lack of youth voice, it's a space and a platform for us to connect really, and also sort of channel our frustrations in a really positive and constructive way.
Amazing, amazing. And what inspired you to start People Power as well?
You started very young, right? So you're
I was
current.
16, so
Wow.
yeah,
Wow,
two
wow.
2 years ago, it was a summer of when I finished my GCSEs, and I found myself at the doors of Westminster for an NEU event, the National Education Union. And for anybody who knows, it's literally a union for teachers. And I was 16 and I walked through the doors and I was like, I don't know why I'm here, but I know that Jeremy Corbyn's speaking and I know Sadiq Khan's there and I just want to know more about education. Like, can I join you guys? And I was on this table with loads of teachers and counsellors talking about like the funding crisis, and I didn't have a clue about what they were talking about, but all I knew is sitting in that room was it didn't feel right for me as a young person to be the only young person there. There was loads of adults always talking about things that impacted us with us not being at the table. And it was at that moment on that day, that event, that I was like, right, like we need to do something about it, because I know that young people care. We're always having conversations about how that annoyed us or how we want this to change. So it was about facilitating that, and that's what my role was then to going forward, to facilitate that space.
And talk about briefly the problems within the education system today, and how like pupil power kind of tries to solve that or create change.
I sort of like made a reaction because I was just like, without sounding pessimistic, there's so many different issues that we talk about. If we just talk about currently, obviously we've just like sort of like semi-post pandemic, whatever that even means. And so over the last like year and a half to 2 years, there's been a lot of conversation around rethinking and reimagining what education looks like, because the pandemic sort of served as a time where everybody was becoming really reflective and thinking about what was working, what wasn't working. And in the context of education, we spoke about the curriculum, how it wasn't reflective of our own backgrounds. There's the decolonising curriculum project that we're really sort of like deep-rooted in with other organisations, looking at exclusions in education, to then looking at like mental health and how that impacts students, to inequality, to like, the pandemic exposing how inequality very much like it exists, those that have versus those that don't have when it came to like technology and accessing online learning. So I can't really like dive deep into like just one issue, but yeah, loads of different areas that we're like really diving into. And I think one of the biggest things I would say is that this idea of centering youth voices. We led a legal challenge against the Department for Education because they breached the United Nations Children's Rights Convention, Article 12, which states that all young people have the right to have their voices heard, which sounds really like, basic, but fundamentally it's important, right? And when the coronavirus daily briefings were going on, young people under the age of 18 couldn't submit a question. Like, literally, we couldn't submit a question just because of our age. And so we literally wrote a letter and we got support on a pro bono basis with these lawyers and led this legal challenge against the DFE to stop that. So it's just like, when we realise something's wrong, we're like, hey, no, what can we do to stop it? And I just love the energy that People Power brings, because we're able to then connect with other people that can support us. It's very collaborative. Amazing.
And what do you think the government could do to also essentially edify the education system within the UK?
I guess it just returns back to the point of like centering youth voices, because as a young person and other young people watching or even here today, like if we are at the table, then you will be hearing directly from us our experiences and from our personal, like from our perspective. A lot of the times when you see these decision-making tables, it's very much representative of a small group, which in itself is problematic. So I just think in terms of like changing the education system entirely, looking at the systems in place to make decisions, looking around the room, who's out on the table, whose voices are you centering? Are you centering the most marginalised? Not all the time, no. And making sure it's not tokenistic either, because again, a lot of times it's just like, let's do this because it looks good for that very moment. And it's like a tick box exercise, which is really frustrating for me, especially as a young person.
And what do you think young people in education today can do? Talk about from the little stuff, and I'm sure, from protesting, but what are like the small kind of fundamentals people can start from today, to get involved and trying to really, implement change within the education system today?
I think, again, it might sound like cliche, but it's like acknowledging what the issue is, and then also acknowledging and validating the feelings that you have associated to that issue. So it's like, right now at uni, being at a place like Cambridge, there's so many issues that existed before I even arrived and will still be there when I leave. And it's like walking into that space and acknowledging that it's happening, this is how it made me feel, now what are you going to do as a result of that? And being like unapologetic with your actions, because it can feel really scary when you're essentially fighting against the grain. Again, whether it seems as a small action, like something happened, you know, like microaggressions, and like not just digesting it, but actually saying, okay, like who can I speak to? Who can I go to? What action can I take? And it's like when you do that action, other people around you see you do that, and then it gives them the sort of strength to do it too, and the encouragement in a really like implicit way. And so I guess my tip for activism would just be like, just take a step forward and speak about things, because again, you don't know who's listening. I always just pick up my phone, jump on Instagram and like talk about something that's happening there and then people reply to it and say, oh yeah, I felt that too, or oh, what can we do? And it just, again, it's just like this energy. It's like when you realize that other people are experiencing the same thing, they feel the same way, it's like, it's just the best feeling, because it's just like you don't feel alone in it.
And what are like your hopes for the future, especially as you know, in a few years, move away from the education system? You know, as you're in it and living and breathing it, it's probably easier for you to see, you know, the problems. But as you leave in the next few years, what are your hopes for that system in general?
My hope is to essentially like solidify like a purpose for education, because right now, like you would say, the purpose for education, I mean, just reflect on yourself, like what do you think the purpose of education is? And I'm very sure the idea that you have of it in your head doesn't actually match the reality. So it's about sort of like solidifying like a core fundamental purpose of what education is and what it's for, and making sure it matches our reality, centering youth voices, and just creating like the definition for like the second term of education is an enlightening experience. So like drawing closer to that very like definition as much as possible.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Leah. Amazing, amazing. And now, before we move on to the amazing The Walking Forest, as many of you may be aware, we are going to be approaching 11 a.m. On the 11th of November, as it is today, for Remembrance Day. A day and moment observed since the end of the First World War to remember those who have died in conflict. We want to take a short moment, shortly, of silence to mark this before returning fully to the discussions. So we'll do that briefly, but just as we go into that, it'll be good to just briefly talk about, you know, the Walking Forest and who you are before we go into that minute silence.
Yeah, so the Walking Forest is an artist-led project. We have 4 lead artists, all women, and they are gathering women across the country to kind of connect with nature and promote the kind of climate crisis. Well, not promote it, but promote what we can do against the climate crisis. And also highlighting that a lot of work that women do goes undervalued, I think. You know, if you think of all the powerful people in the world, like a lot of them are middle-aged white men. So underneath them, there is a lot of work that is done by women that isn't really talked about, and how that was kind of highlighted with our work is that we did this performance action where we carried a tree felled by HS2 through Coventry and then also through Glasgow, and that sort of symbolised that women were carrying the tree and that were underneath the kind of highlight of our action. And I think what was really, well, one of the most amazing things that came from that was the connection that we all shared, and a real empathy and care for each other. And I think what we kind of gained from it was the thought that if everyone put care at like the center of what they do, that would solve so many things, whether that's care for the planet, care for nature, care for each other, that would make such a difference and create such a more beautiful world.
Amazing, amazing. Can't wait to get fully into discussion. Just as we approach 11 a.m., we're going to take that minute of silence, just in remembrance of Remembrance Day.
Perfect. So we'll move quickly again back to the Walking Forest. So it'll be amazing to talk about COP26 briefly. How was it? Any key takeaways? Did it inspire you? I know it's a massive event. It could be super overwhelming. What were your key takeaways?
Yes, so we were at COP for a week. And to be honest, I think I need to quote Greta Thunberg, because I really do think COP26 is a bunch of blah, blah, blah. And my main question is, why would the people who are actually responsible for climate crisis would be interested in fixing it? And why would the leaders whose economies thrive on exploiting Global South would be interested to divert from that and essentially lose money? Example of that, for example, is Boris Johnson took a return flight on a private jet to Glasgow, fully knowing that that is going to be covered in the news, fully understanding it, but he still did it. And I think for me, that represents disrespect, complete alienation of people, because that was a conscious choice of taking a private jet to a climate summit. And to quote him, he says, "Now is the time for everyone to come together and show the determination needed to power on past this blockage." Where was this political illusion when UK made a decision to support more North Sea drilling this September, despite the climate pledge? When Joe Biden said, "We can do this, we just have to make a choice to do it." Right, so Biden's administration's choice this summer was to back oil sands pipeline and resume drilling auctions in August. And this is just two examples. You probably heard about Jeff Bezos speaking and how he came to this revelation when he was in space that Earth is actually very beautiful and fragile and that we should save it. And that's why he generously gave us $10 billion for climate fund. Oh, thank you, Jeff. But this is beyond hypocrisy, and it is a fully conscious ecocide, and I would even call it murder. Their decisions directly impact all of us, and it will start, and it has started with Global South and people from poorer communities. However, those are the voices that we hear the least. I don't know if you heard about COP26 and the visa issue, which was the reason why loads of indigenous communities and speakers couldn't come to talk. But that, again, for me, showed that they're not giving space, they're not allowing space for those voices to be heard. Because why would they? Because they will contradict what they stand for. And I think this is where the activism comes, and what activism should be about. It should be about giving space for the voices that we have to listen to, for especially indigenous voices, West Papua, Amazonia, because they have all the solutions. They always had them. We went to a couple of talks in COP26 by these leaders. They know everything. If only we listen to them, like if only these people who are actually at COP26, guarded by so much police, a helicopter, and like it's actually insanity. Like if they would listen to these people, if they were sitting with us next to me and Leah, the climate crisis could actually be solved. And I, as an activist, I don't trust the government. I don't think they are on our side. And they are perfectly aware of what they're doing. And I think you should remember that as well. Don't forgive them. Hold them accountable. They're not stupid. And don't let them fool you with their greenwashing, poetic, we're all in this together. No, we're not. You're not listening to us. So yeah, I think that's the main takeaway.
Thank you for breaking down COP26. But also, talk briefly about, again, I think everyone who's spoken today has kind of, spoken about, being let down, obviously, at the powers that be. So for young people and just anyone in general, watching this, what's your advice to them? Obviously, not to look at, the powers that be, and, how to get started in, local activism. Because, again, as you know, if we were to listen blindly to the, people who hold power, political power, obviously we'll be in a different situation. But, again, every single one of you here today and people have spoken have done something outside of what, institutions may have told them to do.
I think one of the key things to think about is generosity and kind of putting that at the heart of everything you do. I think in terms of getting started in activism, I'd probably not term it that. I think that using that name for it puts quite a lot of pressure on you. And I think what you can do is just like really small things and things that are accessible to you. And I think a good way to get started is to do something that will benefit you kind of immediately. And then that will kind of kickstart and get the ball rolling with doing loads and loads more. And I think once you get started, you research into it, you find out more, you educate yourself, and then you feel more able to do extra things. So I think in terms of things that you can do initially is sort of have shorter showers, have the heating on less, put on an extra jumper, and those are things that are going to lower your energy bill, which is good for the planet, but also good for you because you're going to be paying less. Or you can try and eat some more plant-based things. I think a massive thing that I'm doing at the moment is buying everything secondhand in terms of like clothing, because I do like to buy new clothes, but you can get some absolute steals in the charity shop, which you're giving generously, and that money is going to go to a better cause. But it's really cheap for you. You get new clothes, and I think the great thing about charity shops is that like you can also find absolutely anything in there. Like you'll find things that you never thought you didn't realize that you knew. I actually got a pair of, whether they're real or not, I'm not sure, but I got some Christian Louboutins in a charity shop for 20 quid yesterday, which is like being a kind of 16-year-old me. It was a dream to have some Christian Louboutins. So yeah, I think they're sort of things that you can do immediately, and they're beneficial to you, and it's a really positive impact on the planet, but also for your kind of mental well-being in terms of activism being a sustainable thing, because activism is a lot about sustainability, but it also needs to be sustainable for you as an individual.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So we've got some questions for our lovely panelists from online. But before, does anyone have questions in the audience?
Feel free to ask any questions here.
Going once.
Don't be shy.
Going twice.
There we go. There we go. We got someone. Sorry, sir. Would you mind standing up? And if you could just briefly introduce yourself as well.
Hi, my name's Joe. I work on the Detroit Coventry Exchange and the Music Exchange. Yeah, I guess the question I'd sort of ask is, although there's sort of areas around change through activism, protest, etc., I think also one of the biggest things is encouraging people to vote, because unfortunately the only hand we are dealt with is the means of change that we have, and the only way that we do change people in power is to use that vote. And people have fought, massively hard through history through that right, and I think it's just really important to actually have tangible change. You need to actually change people in power. So do you sort of try and encourage people to vote for any in particular parties, or go into sort of local activism, or consider running as like independent candidates, etc.?
Well, I think the issue with voting and why loads of young people are not voting anymore, because we have lost hope in the government. Like I do vote. I can't vote in UK. I vote back in my country, but I think empty promises. You vote for something and it never happens. Joe Biden promised us a Green Deal and then he invests in drilling. Like, sorry, what exactly am I voting for at this point? And to also echo what Leo was saying about individual actions, as much as I agree with that, I think bigger problem and bigger issue is that these individual actions mean nothing if there's no systematic change. And that's what we need right now. And I don't really see any party promising that.
Also, just to add, like in schools, you're not taught about, like, you don't learn about politics unless you go and study politics at A level. So I honestly, until I was in year 12, didn't know the difference between political parties, and that's not necessarily my fault. And so by the time you turn 18, if you've not had that education, then you don't know who to vote for. And most times it's based on social media, like sort of like echo chambers. You go on Twitter and like you see on the TL that people are like, not liking Johnson, so then you don't vote for Johnson, but you don't actually understand, So it's like education is definitely also missing as well, like fair, adequate education in like politics, political parties and all of that, so you can actually make a well-judged decision.
And if we got Lara and Ayodeji, what's voting like in countries like Nigeria and Lebanon? If you're still there. Nope.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Yes, so the question is just on voting. So what's your...
Yes, voting, yes. So for example, in Nigeria, voting is pretty much low. The turnout of people is low. We just, one of the states, Anambra State in the eastern Nigeria, just conducted an election. That was 2 days ago. And the turnout rate was very low. Just about 200,000 people came out to vote. And we're talking of a state that has, close to maybe a million or more. So voting is pretty very low in Nigeria, and it's more of what the panels there said. The thing is, Nigerians no longer believe in the government. They don't believe that they're going to implement whatever they vote for. So they just feel the best way is to leave it, which I think is wrong. I think that as much as many of us are kind of cynical, we should still vote, because the excuse of all these older people, all these old men in power is that, young people are not interested in politics, young people are not interested in governance and leadership and all of those things. So I believe we should continue to vote. Though voting is low, but we'll just continue to encourage it.
Amazing. And Laura, are you still there?
Yes, still here.
Perfect.
Well, actually, so we're in this elections phase right now. We have a deadline for the diaspora to register with November 20th. So there's a major campaign going around the world, pushing people to register to vote, because we're counting on also the the masses of Lebanese who've emigrated, who've left the country because of the situation, and who are the people who will probably vote for the right people, to be registered to vote and to be ready for the elections that happen early next year. Last elections and in previous elections, I think similar to Ayodeji, that people don't have faith in voting. They don't think that it would get them anywhere. They feel like the system is so instilled that elections won't make a difference. So we're trying to fight that opinion and try to get people to voice up and at least register to vote, and when the time comes, see how you feel. So we're hoping, and we really pushed hard. We got tens of thousands of extra votes because of this campaign abroad, and hopefully that will make a difference. Hopefully we'll see that result in March next year.
Amazing, amazing. And we've got one quick question here from someone online. The question here states, how has activism impacted you at such a young age? And this is a question to the panel. Who would like to go first?
I was just thinking about this actually as Lara was speaking about like this idea of like burnout, and like activism isn't really pretty. It isn't like, it's a lot. It's like, again, it's lived experiences. As a young person, even like with leading people power, like everything we talk about is my own lived experiences. And so like when we were going on Zoom talking about what the government's done or this decision, it's like actually directly impacting you, which is like emotionally draining. And so when you're going like, day in, day out, and you're on the ground like fighting with other grassroots organizations to change things, it's a lot, and it takes energy and it takes time, and it's a lot. And so sometimes you get to a point where you honestly burn yourself out because you're like, you feel this sense of like responsibility on your shoulders, which is a lot, especially as a young person. Like if something doesn't change, I'm like, oh, it's my fault that it hasn't changed. When I'm literally like one person out of thousands of students, it's like I can't change everything overnight, but you feel this like burden to do it. So I would just say like activism in that sense like directly impacts me like emotionally, like physically, and like just mentally. It's a lot to like take on, because you just feel this responsibility to like change everything and like take responsibility for things when it's not your fault and you can't do it alone.
I think I would echo that as well, like kind of mental health and that burnout feeling is a massive part of it. And I think that's why I like we talk about the systematic change, which is so important. And kind of when you boil it down, like that's what is really needed. But I think if you think about that for too long or went too hard, you feel kind of hopeless and like you can't do anything, which I think is where the individual things that you can do is really beneficial.
I think that's why we are a duo, because she thinks about individual stuff. I think more about system, but definitely that's very true. But I think understanding, which also still puts lots of pressure, but if you are able to take that, okay, this is heavy, I don't feel well, sit with it and transfer it to anger, also not a great emotion, but at least it drives something further. So yeah, that's my advice.
If I could just add, I think as well, I think activism's kind of shaped my thoughts almost, rather than my thoughts shaping like how what I do as an activist. I think my kind of when I started doing or thinking about the climate was probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and when I think back on what I did and how I thought then is very different to what I do and how I think now. I think it does, starting small, and then it does kind of grow and it does develop you, but I would say in a good way. I hope that everyone agrees with that.
Perfect. And before we move to Jad from Lebanon, who's also going to talk about his film, is there one last question in the audience?
Yep, we've got someone here.
Go for it.
Yeah, we got a mic coming to you right now.
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm also involved in the Youthful Cities project. I did some work a while ago in Thailand when they were working with different governments about climate change, talking about that. And one of the things that they would say is that they're like, so they're coming from this perspective of countries that they're developing and they haven't got as much of a climate impact anyway because they're just not made that much emissions. And we're telling them that they need to be more climate conscious. And they come back saying, well, actually, if we do anything, if we made our emissions zero, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference because the bigger countries are causing so much emissions. So like, I don't know, how do you, because I feel like on a personal level, that's the problem too, because I like that idea of the individual quiet activism, just doing things every day, but there's so many like big corporations and big governments doing stuff that means that you could be completely, make no emissions or anything, but if the governments and the corporations who have no interest in changing anything are not going to change, then it won't make any difference. So how do you feel like we can actually fight that tangibly?
I 100% agree with you, and that's what I stand for, because you going vegan, if the government is doing nothing, won't change anything. And that is, sorry to say it, but we're past that point of going vegan and saving the world. And because what you're saying as well, it's a neoliberal policy. So that's essentially what I'm not a communist, that's not what I'm saying. But I think capitalism has to be reimagined, because capitalism, the root of the problem. And I don't know if you heard the saying, but it's not that we need to have less people in the world, well, but it's not less humanity, it's less capitalism. And I think I really do stand by. And what you're saying is essentially that we as Global North are exploiting Global South, putting all responsibility on them and saying, well, you should do better, and completely ignoring what we are doing, because we're benefiting from that, you know? And it's like a closed circle. And what we can do in that sense, obviously, is to challenge that as much as you can, but also I think giving space. I think this is one of the main things we should be doing now, is giving space for them to speak here, giving space for those indigenous voices, because we don't hear them enough.
Yeah, I completely agree, because there's countries like Tuvalu that are going to be completely gone, and we don't even hear about them, and we don't hear their voices, and they don't, like, you think about all the UN and stuff and how it all works and how all these intergovernment systems work, and it's all, the North have all the power, and it's, if they actually changed the system and made it so that the South, or it's the people who are less heard, or even not even the governments, but the people in the grassroots projects and stuff, they actually hear those voices rather than the people who have more power. I think that's really important, but it just feels like you're powerless to actually make that change, so it's quite hard.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your questions. We're going to be turning to Jad, who is based in Lebanon. Jad, are you still there?
Yes. Now you're going to watch the short film Not Much Longer Now. It's the product of a year-long collaboration between writers in Beirut and Coventry through the Youthful Cities program. Beirut's 6 writers wrote and directed the short film in response to the larger question of what youth expect from their city. It explores the history of Lebanon's trains and reflects on a collective sense of liminality, loss, uprootedness, and navigating uncertainty. I hope you enjoy the short film.
مرحبا، بدي اطلع بالقطار الواصل على الشام. قديش بعد بده يوصل على بيروت؟
عادي وارتاح، صار واصل.
اوكي ميرسي. شكله متأخر شوي.
هانت، صار واصل. هانت صار واصل.
هانت صار واصل.
هانت صار واصل.
هانت صار واصل.
هانت صار واصل.
هانت صار واصل.
An image of
oriental elegance tinged with the civility of the West. Here, East meets West in a fantasia only the Hollywood studios can dream of. Now, where is this modernized oasis, you may ask? Well, it's the Lebanon. The tiny, not-so-Arab nation nestled cozily between our friends and enemies in the Levant. Everyone is flocking here to snatch up their own piece of paradise in the form of a chalet, a bungalow, or even their own exotic belly dancer. You can lounge on the beach in the morning, then hop onto one of the exquisitely built British trains to sit in the mountains all through the evening. And not the outdoorsy type? Well, buy a ticket to ride one of those fine British trains and head to the Casino du Liban, where you can gamble away your problems to the jazzy tunes of Danny Thomas and Duke Ellington. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it right here in Lebanon, somewhere along those groovy oriental tracks. P.S. They say a metro is coming soon.
I am so sick of waiting. I think it is because I can't tell if anything is coming or if these monsters are here to stay. Ever since I was a young girl, this notion of time as something factual, a moving train, an unstoppable god, has terrified me. In my old dreams, time was a fast, very fury animal, and I was always chasing after it, screaming, "Slow down, wait for us, don't leave behind." I wanted to push back on time as a construct, to hold it instead in my palms, as though it were clay and I could mold it into an inanimate object that we could simply bear witness to. If I look back, it was simple. I was trying to reckon with my premature understanding of death. I wanted to have time be on my side so I wouldn't deal with the eventual loss of faces and blankets and flowers I loved. This is why I love to dance, because only then are you allowed to become a moment, to stretch like the pink sky or a season in transition or this one lyric from a day-long album. I think you know what I mean, that when we move, we accept, we release. Listen, here every day we have to reckon with death. We have to reckon with loss after loss after loss. The loss of fuel and friends and money and certainty and water and homes and bodies and eyes and patience and trees and tents and hope and medicine. Oof. I worry that if I turn, even my memory of this place will die. I mean to say I am here over a decade later, and time no longer feels like an animal or a moving train. It's an old tree, wilting. No amount of water or sunlight or love will make a difference. It droops like a shoulder. We stand by like an indifferent god. There, the adult in me responds to the child. Time has become an inanimate object exactly as you'd wanted it to be. It's not moving forward. You're stuck. You, all of you, stuck.
Since August 4th, 1895, when the first steam train departed from Beirut and chugged its way through the Bekaa Valley to the Riyadh station, the Lebanon has only grown more modern and civilized. The whistle of the train taught the Lebanese to abide by industrial time, transforming the country into a hub of banking, tourism, and business. Some call it the Switzerland of the Middle East. Yes, Lebanon is a paragon of East meets West, where the ancient and the modern come to play.
امتى حيوصل القطار؟
اصبري شوي بس لا تخلص الحرب.
لا تخلص الحرب، فكرت الحرب أصلا خلصت.
هيك بيقولوا.
هيك بيقولوا.
I just wish we could leave together. Somewhere else. Anywhere else.
When the time comes, if the train comes, I'm not gonna hold you back.
But this is my home. My family is here. You're here.
Home? What's left of home? Can you remember the last time we did anything normal?
I don't.
I've been worrying about my dad. He seems to be getting worse, giving up. The house is unlivable now, and every time I leave, I worry about him. I'm scared that he's gonna die here. I'm scared I'm gonna die here. Okay, sorry. Let's talk about something else, please.
Look at that fisherman and his boat. He seems like a happy guy.
Yeah, maybe I'll build a little fishing boat or a big sailing boat, and I can sail around the world and follow you wherever you go, like a little fish.
No, you sail the boat and I swim beside you like a little fish, just floating in the water forever.
Can you imagine though, just sailing through the sea, the whole world at the end of our fingertips? We can just hop from island to island, sit in the sun until we wrinkle like raisins. No borders, no visas, no passport control. No one to buy and sell the damn sea.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, we better get moving.
Or we can just hop on that plane and see where it ends up.
Yeah, but you know I hate planes.
I know, but just this one plane. Then we'll go to the other place and never leave. Imagine that.
Never leave?
But we'll be together at least. I just wish I could know what life would be for us every day if we didn't have to fight to live. I keep hearing that we are too young to be going through what we're going through. I feel like I've aged too quickly. Like I add more stones to my pocket with every heavy day, feeling more and more tied down to Beirut and feeling more and more like I should be elsewhere.
I know. All the adults I see around me seem more like screaming children the older we get. I'm starting to see frown lines when I look at myself in the mirror, and they weren't there like a year ago.
Do you worry that you'll forget?
Over time, we forget most details. It's crazy how things blur. But I'll never forget you. I'll never forget this. You and Lebanon and the sea are the same to me. And if it takes exile to see a light in your eyes again, I'll take it.
And you'll find me?
I promise. And Allah Rad.
As the 90s usher in the fall of the Soviet Union and the Starbucks on every corner, Lebanon too is pleased to announce its own good news. The civil war is finally over, and leadership will return to the very same warlords who started the kerfuffle in the first place. But never fear, the Lebanese are a resilient and peppy lot who stare adversity down and come out on the other side stronger. I think. I'm not so sure anymore. Anyhow, for the loyal train enthusiasts out there, my sources have assured me that while most of the tracks here have been plucked from the earth and most of the locomotives have been sold for parts and smelted, there is a multi-billion-dollar plan to revive the train. But where it would go, I'm not sure, as borders are closed and the Lebanese scarcely trust their own. In the meantime, concrete is king, as projects to carpet over the natural landscape with roads is what is en vogue. Trains are out. I get it.
Bollocks. I give up.
بونسوار.
بونسوار.
ناطرة القطار؟
هيك الهيئة.
قد ايه صار لك ناطرة؟
من امبارح أو الجمعة الماضي أو من شي 40 سنة.
ما بتتعبي من النطرة؟
هيدي بلد النطرة، البرزخ قبل يوم الحساب، قبل الجنة والنار. هلأ مش ناطرين إلا إنه الله ينجينا. في شي تاني نعمله؟
ما بعتقد إنه الله رح يرد علينا خبر.
هيك بيقولوا.
صار لنا كذا شهر هيك، يومية ليل وبعد ونهار على نفس الحالة. كل يوم بفيق وبلبس أرق تياب عندي إياها، وشعري بصير يلزق على خدودي وعلى رقبتي، وبغسل وجهي 100 مرة، وبنطر ليجي دوري على محطة البنزين، وبتلقح بالتخت وبغمض عيوني لحتى يوقفوا يبرموا شفرات المروحة، وبنطر ليرجعوا يدوروا، وبنطر ليتعودوا عيوني على العتمة. بس تعبت من النطرة. انت ما تعبتي من النطرة؟
بعد فترة بتتعودي، بيقولوا الصبر مفتاح الفرج.
أو ليك بكون أنانية إذا ضاق خلقي؟ عم حس كأنه عم يخلص عمري. كنت قضي ليل نهار عم قاوم بالطرقات، جرب قاوم مستقبل كله نطرة، قاوم شبح الحرب يلي بليتونا فيها. وهلأ صارت مثل حرب جديدة مش حاسبين الحساب، مثل الموت بتقرب على البطيء بتخلي الواحد يتمنى تسرع تاخده.
بعيد الشر.
بعدهم شبابيك بيتي كأنهم مش موجودين.
رح يكون في شبابيك بالقطار.
كيف كان الوضع أول ما جيتوا تنطروا هون؟
رزق الله هديك الأيام، كنا مفكرين رح يبقى لنا وقت طويل، كنا نحنا كأنه العالم كله إلنا، كأنه العالم كله كان موجود. كنت لف سندويشات واركب بالقطار لروح على البحر، بيجتمعوا كل رفقاتنا ناكل تحت الشمس. كنت أقدر أركب القطار من بيروت على الناقورة، ومن الناقورة على دمشق، ومن دمشق على حيفا. كانت الحدود كأنها مي، كنت حس حالي عصفور.
هلأ شو؟
شو قولك؟ قولك العصافير بينطروا إذا فيهم يطيروا. كيف كنا مفكرين عنا وقت طويل.
بس يجي الترين، وهيدا إذا إجا رح تطلعي؟
ما الهيئة؟
ليش لا؟ صار لك ناطرة كل هالسنين؟
وقتي خلص، صار له فترة يا عصفورة.
ووقتي أنا؟
وقتك بين إيديكي.
ما في ولا محل تاني مثل بلده للواحد.
بعرف، بس بلدك حيضلوا ناطرك والباب بيضلوا مفتوح، بس تذكري ترجعي. خلصت الحرب؟
يمكن، بس نحن فالين.
بس لوين؟
ما بعرف، محل مش هون.
ايمتى؟
بعد دقيقتين.
لحظة.
يلا حبيبي، وصل القطار.
Mind the gap. Mind the lag. Mind the gap. Mind the lag. Mind the lag. Lag the lag. Mind everything before it's too late. Before you forget. Before everyone forgets. The lag, yes. The lag. Mind your step. Watch the gaps. Between the train and the platform, there's a gap. The train lags. Mind that space. Don't slip in between. Set the time it right. Forget your life. Set your watch to the train chime. Step over the gap. Catch up with the lag. Or else.
Wow, amazing. Can we just get a quick round of applause? Powerful. Powerful, powerful. Thank you so much for that.
Jad, are you still there?
Yes.
Perfect. Do you want to quickly, just briefly, just talk about that film and just share just last closing thoughts?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, so do you want to quickly just talk about that film and just your last just closing thoughts?
Yes, it was hard because of COVID and the distance between us and Coventry. It was a lot of hard work, but it was a labor of love, and we're very proud of the film.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Can we get another round of applause for that movie? That was amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Sad to say that we have come to the end of the panel, Everything Activism. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wherever you are as well in the world, thank you so much. And a special thanks to our panelists, Aaliyah, that's come all the way from Cambridge. We've got the Walking Forest, Jana and Leah. And we also have Ayodeji from Nigeria, Lara from Lebanon, and Jad from Lebanon as well. Can we get another round of applause for them?
And also, please make sure you follow everyone on their socials. I believe on My Runway Group, all our socials are there. And yeah, just support everyone's journeys. Again, activism means many things, and you can support from where you are. Although, everyone, people are in Nigeria, Lebanon, and sometimes, yeah, it might feel so far away from us, but, the UK won't get any better unless the world gets better. And, we can do little stuff, so please, support everyone, follow everyone on their socials, follow their journeys. And yeah, honestly, all these little stuff will help. So again, thank you to everyone being here. Thank you for everyone submitting their questions. And yeah, we move.
Amazing. Thank you.
Don't move yet. No. You don't move yet. Don't move yet. So yes, guys, that was such an incredible start to today's program. I really sat there and I was just like, there's so many things to think about, and I hope those of you that are listening remotely and virtually, that it gave you a lot to think about. It was incredibly informative, thought-provoking, and very inspiring. But I hope we can all agree a break is needed. So I'm very happy to announce we have a 25-minute break for you guys. So those of you at home and those of you that are right in front of me can grab a nice warm drink because it's a little bit chilly in here. But of course, when we rejoin at 12 o'clock, we have poetry from Theo, and we also have our next panel, which is going to be all about taking fashion sustainability to new heights. Of course, as I said, that panel was incredibly informative, so I really want to encourage you, those of you at home and those of you that are live in the flesh, to use our Miro board, and also you can use the Wall of Hope just around the corner at the back, just to share any thoughts, feelings, or opinions, or any questions you might have that might come to your mind during the break. Of course, the panelists will be hovering around. Hope I'm not putting you on the spot there. They'll be hovering around, so feel free to grab them if there's anything you want to discuss one-to-one. Just relax and enjoy it, guys. So yes, we have our break. Let's get it started. See you at 12.